Hey guys, welcome to another Mentoring Monday. In today's talk, I'm going to dive a little deeper into the subject of appreciation, which just happens to be the ninth single release off my new album, The Voice of Reason. It releases on October 6th. So the original inspiration for this track came from my days as a CEO and leader of my company that fortunately had a very strong management team. During this time of my life, I was very focused on achieving results, always striving to improve the top and the bottom line. I pushed my management team very hard. They were all high achievers, but I did not show them enough appreciation. I didn't think that they needed it because I did not need it myself. But I was very wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong. So at this time of my life, I get to reflect back on what worked and did not work for me in the past, and I get a do-over on the things I didn't do well. I now show appreciation to all the people in my life. Do you want the good people in your life to enjoy being around you? Do you want to increase the loyalty factor to those people in your life? Do you want to improve the quality of those relationships? Then show people appreciation. It costs nothing, just effort. People will work hard for you as long as you show them appreciation. Now I'd like to dig a little deeper into the topic of appreciation by focusing on ourselves, appreciating our blessings, and how can we appreciate ourselves and our situations even more? How can we achieve more happiness? How can we appreciate the good things in our life rather than focusing on what we don't have or what we want to complain about? It's not easy. I read an article in Psychology Today by Steve Taylor about the power of appreciation, how gratitude can change our lives. He mentioned a syndrome that is just so right on and powerful, the taking for granted syndrome, which is a tendency that we have to switch off the value of the good things in our life. We often fail to appreciate the full value of our health, or the people that we love, or for peace, freedom, and prosperity, and the very fact that we are alive. In many countries around the world, that's not the case in the general population. We usually learn to value and appreciate those things that are taken away from us. For example, when we become seriously ill, or when one of our partners leaves us. Perhaps we're taking them for granted. Or if we experience poverty or imprisonment. At that point, we tell ourselves, if I were only healthy again, if only my wife or my husband would come back to me, then I'd definitely be happy. If we're fortunate enough, those things might be returned to us again. And then we usually go through a honeymoon period of real appreciation, but this is only temporary. This is where it gets interesting. So after a while, the taking for granted syndrome operates again, switching off the value of our blessings. The taking for granted syndrome is clearly related to the phenomenon of adaptation, the process by which we quickly get used to a new environment or new situations. These experiences and sensations quickly lose their sensory power as we get used to them. The taking for granted syndrome is also at the root of the concept of the hedonic treadmill. What's that? This concept suggests that human beings have a baseline of happiness that we keep returning to. When positive events happen to us in our lives, for example, when we enter into a new relationship, move to a bigger house, get promoted, or even win the lottery, they bring a temporary lift to our happiness. How about that new car smell? Buy a new car. Same thing. But in short, we adapt to the situation and return to the same level of well-being as before. Why does it seem that we can never have enough? This is a treadmill because it suggests no matter what happens to us or what we do, And no matter how intense our short-term happiness may be, we can never actually make ourselves happier in the long run. We can never raise ourselves above the baseline of happiness. Positivity psychologists suggest that this temporary lift of positive happiness lasts about maybe 3 months. And that if we want to sustain this happiness, we need to generate new potential events and experiences. Can you see how this treadmill of constantly seeking happiness can never end? Interesting. And how do we get off this hedonic treadmill? This is where the important concept of appreciation comes back to help us. This part of my talk is so big and important that I really need to give it a separate session. So I'm going to do this in part 2, which is going to be in 2 weeks. So in the meantime, start showing appreciation to people in your life. And in part 2 of appreciation, I'll talk about appreciating what you currently have in your life and how to transcend the taking it for granted syndrome. I'll see you again in 2 weeks. And remember, it's never too late to reinvent yourself. Cheers.
BiXX's 9th single release from the album, The Voice of Reason, Appreciation, is a track that brings attention to the importance of showing appreciation to the good people in our lives. We all possess the power to transform relationships by showing appreciation.